For the further analysis, we're joined now by Omar Rahman. He is a fellow at the Middle East Council on Global Affairs. Thanks very much for being with us. So let me ask you, first of all, about the various diplomatic efforts that are going on right now in Qatar, not for the first time. How hopeful are you, if I can say that, at this point of a ceasefire coming out of this?
Out of the talks with Qatar, I'm not that hopeful, and we heard the same kind of skepticism from the Qatari diplomat himself, saying that the talks are ongoing and that's something to be hopeful about, but at the same time, the two sides aren't near each other. So in that regard, I'm not. Clearly, there's some growing American frustration, and now Secretary Blinken is headed back to the region to press the Israelis a bit. So there may be some hope on that end, because if anybody can get the Israelis on board with ending the military strikes, it's the United States, but it needs to exercise more leverage and pressure.
What leverage should that be at this point?
I mean, it really needs to use everything at its disposal. We're seeing the most horrific catastrophe, the genocide of the people in the Gaza Strip, the mass starvation that is now taking place. And so what we're seeing is totally unparalleled. So the United States needs to use everything at its disposal, and it has plenty in terms of its relationship with Israel, in terms of its armament, its financial and diplomatic support. So there is much pressure it could use. I don't know if it's going to, but it needs to.
Okay, let's talk a little bit more about that then. I mean, specifically on the arms shipments, should it, for example, threaten to withhold that?
Absolutely. I mean, that would be, at the very least, abiding by American law, which governs this type of thing. You're not allowed to give weapons or sell weapons or provide aid to a country that's committing war crimes. And those war crimes are evident in this instance. And there are other things. I mean, the U.S. is not allowed to give aid to a country that's blocking U.S. humanitarian aid delivered to somebody else, which the United States is doing. That's a violation of U.S. law. So the Biden administration is bound by its own laws to stop providing Israel with these arms, this aid, but it is not doing so, and that's for political reasons. But the U.S. needs to exercise those type of measures at this point.
You mentioned there political implications, but there is a groundswell of opinion, isn't there, in the United States, particularly among younger people, that is showing more criticism of Israeli policy and more support for the Palestinians, and that's also affecting Biden politically. How much of a factor is that in all of this?
Certainly, it's a factor, and the U.S. public opinion is definitely behind a ceasefire. The majority of public opinion, in terms of crucial demographics that support the Democrats and that Biden needs in the upcoming election, young people, African Americans, Arab Americans in these swing states, it can certainly play a factor. And I think this administration is waking up to that. It is worried about that kind of thing. Now, what it's willing to do in terms of appeasing those demographics by using pressure on the Israelis to bring an end to this war, I'm not sure. Biden hasn't shown any movement on that. At most, we've seen a change in tone. We've seen public displays of frustration, but those are performative as long as the U.S. is not taking substantive measures to pressure the Israelis to end this.
Good to talk to you, Omar Rahman. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me.